Minister, happy Sunday to you.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing today?
We are fine, Honorable Minister.
It's been 7.5 years of the Buhari administration. How will you describe the journey so far in terms of infrastructure development?
Well, it's been challenging and also very inspiring. And the last report our ministry presented under the arrangement by the Ministry of Information for all departments of government to report what they have done is consistent with our commitment to account for our time and also account for the resources that have been placed at our disposal. And one other thing to note from the report I shared is that from the very first day, we decided to be very methodical in what we do. And so that's how those records were compiled. So on every construction site, we are reporting the quantities of materials used. There's an inventory sheet. We have a central planning department in Abuja. So all of the feedback comes from the controllers in the 36 states. Each contractor must report the number of people employed on his site, and we also go out to monitor. And yes, everybody wants to see the final output, a finished road, a finished house, but we must understand that governments all over the world, without exception, commit to infrastructure for one major reason, in order to boost their economy. So beyond the roads, beyond the housing, there are a lot of human stories. And those were the things that I shared at the presentation. Those are the many unseen, perhaps unreported things that we have documented. So when you're talking of infrastructure, it is for the purpose of boosting the economy, ease of doing business, travel time, quality of life. If a 3-hour journey becomes 30 minutes, you have 2 hours, extra hours of productive time that you can go and do other things. It becomes less stressful. It impacts cost of travel. It impacts cost of goods and services, and so on and so forth. So it's a means to an end, infrastructure, not an end in itself.
You were quoted as saying the administration has been able to construct and complete more than 8,352 kilometers of roads and created about 339,955 jobs between 2016 and 2022. Can you give us a kind of breakdown?
Yes, I said so, and as I said, it is based on the report that we collated. So let me again explain, as I've sought to do on many occasions. Nigeria has roads owned by different levels of government. So the total national network is over 200,000 kilometers. The federal government owns about 18% of that. That's about 30,000 plus kilometers. But they are the most used in terms of traffic volumes because they are roads that connect states as against municipal roads that connect local governments and against local government roads that connect wards. So we must understand it. So, for example, the Lagos-Ibadan Express route that your colleague was talking about is 127 kilometers. So you don't build 127 kilometers of an existing road that you want to rebuild by shutting it down. You can't. People's livelihoods depend on that road. So how do we construct? We close off a section perhaps of one side, 10, 15 kilometers, 5 kilometers. We build that side, divert traffic to the other side. When we finish, we reopen it. And that is the reason for some of the gridlocks that have been reported on your network and many other networks it's the cost of construction. So on that side, for example, we finished 10 kilometers, it's completed. Of course, to some people, it may mean that, oh, they haven't finished the road, but we've constructed 10 kilometers and we go on an accrual basis. So I can give you some headline data. So as of today, we have 1,642 contracts. 1,642 contracts, and I stress the word contracts, but they represent 1,623 projects. So there are more contracts than projects. So a project is Lagos Ibadan, but you have two contractors there. They have two different contracts. Now, that road, as I speak to you, in the section between Shagamu and Lagos, is 44 kilometers. As of today, 37.75 kilometers has been totally asphalted. By asphalt, that's the black bitumen material that people are used to. But earthworks are going. So is that 37 kilometers that I'm reporting, for example, as constructed? On Abuja, Kano, that Jide talked about, there are three sections there. The section from Kano to Zaria, Zaria to Kaduna, and Kaduna to Abuja. So the section from Kano to Zaria, for example, is 137 kilometers. As I speak, 152 kilometers of asphalt on both sides, that's about 70-something kilometers aggregated, has been constructed. So this is what we are reporting over those 1,000 plus contracts that I told you about. I hope that makes some sense and provides the clarification you were looking for.
Now, you talked about the rehabilitation of 12 major roads spanning 896,187 kilometers.
No, 806 kilometers.
897
meters.
Okay.
896 kilometers.
187. Oh, thank you, sir. Now,
so those are roads sections that we have constructed. We have completed those sections. So you will see, let us take, for example, Kano to Maiduguri, which is one of those roads. Okay. Kano to Maiduguri starts, as the name suggests, from Kano to Maiduguri. It's 560 kilometers of dual carriageway. So the section between Azare and Potiskum, that is between Bauchi and Yobe, has been finished, open to traffic, commissioned. Now, that's 106 kilometers. The section between Shuarin and Azare, that is between Jigawa and Bauchi, has been finished, open to traffic. That is 142 kilometers. The section between Damaturu and Maiduguri, that is Yobe to Maiduguri, the last section, has not been completed because at some time during the Northeast crisis, contractors left the site. So the other roads, Isoko Ring Road, F1 Laye, Erimo Iwaraja Road, Sokoto, Tambuwa, Jega, that is the section between Kebbi and Niger States, 304 kilometers, Lafia to Tunga, Adeja to Nguru, and that's the section between Kirikasama and Nguru, Newe to Duma, Vandekea to Obudu. So those ones that have been completed and commissioned by the ministers representing those states on behalf of the president aggregate alone, 12 of them alone aggregate to 896 kilometers. Okay. But as I said earlier, not only do we take data, we measure the impact. So we ask people using the road, we do surveys. So some of the feedback that came to us is that on the aggregate, these have impacted the economy, and I will share some of those figures with you. Travel time on those roads has reduced by an aggregate of 56.2%. Let me repeat that, 56.2% in reduction of travel time. So let me give you an example. Lafia Tunga 84 kilometers used to take 2 hours. is now 1 hour, 30 minutes. Obudu, Vandekea is 24 kilometers. It used to take 60 minutes. It's now 30 minutes. And so on and so forth. Let me give you Sokoto Tambua, 304 kilometers. That journey used to take 9 hours. From those who use the road, it's now 4 hours, 30 minutes. And so on and so forth, in order not to take time. But this is feedback coming from commuters, drivers, motor unions, who say this is what this road has done to them. Community leaders who spoke during the commissioning ceremony. And all of this data and video is available. But it also then impact travel cost. But let me finish with travel time. So every time that is saved, if time is money, those people have been enriched. Poverty has been addressed somewhat because they have disposable time with which to be more productive. The stress of driving and all of that, long hours spent away from families, all of that has been reduced, and those have values. Now, in terms of travel costs, it was 56.25 reduction. Again, this is data from the field in terms of travel costs. Before, of course, we had this global inflation crisis that have impacted cost of living generally.
So, Honorable Minister,
I have a follow-up. Yeah.
okay. Tell us how exactly your administration is able to find money in a season of paucity of funds to execute some of these gigantic projects. How exactly are you able to do it?
Okay, so the president must take a lot of credit for many of the things I report today, and I say this not in a patronizing way. So at the start of the administration, some of our colleagues in cabinet said, okay, look, go and do PPP, you don't want in Lagos, and I explained to them that, look, PPPs take time to conclude, and they may happen, but you must also locate that within the setup of the economy and what the global migratory investment capital is indicating. But one day, I decided to do a presentation to council to show how long it takes to conclude a PPP using the Lekki-Epe Expressway case as a model. That project started during Asiwaju's time. The concession agreement was signed in 2005. I was chief of staff then. We did not reach financial close until 2010. I'd become governor, and the president said, oh, we can't wait this long. And the first thing he did was he set up a fund called the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. And he said, the dividend earnings of Nigeria under the NLNG must be put in that fund and invested in infrastructure. And he listed 3 projects he wanted in that fund. Second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kanu, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Because he had told me 1 week after he swore me in at a meeting he invited me to, he said, these 3 projects are my priority. Lagos-Ibadan, Abuja-Kanu, Second Niger Bridge. And so that was the beginning of funding for those 3 projects. And that's why you are seeing the progress I can report today. Later on, he went on a foreign trip, and one of his messages to our international partners was, look, there's a lot of Nigeria's money illegally taken out of the country. Can you refund some of them, especially during the military era? So some of those monies started coming in, and he said, put it in the PIDF. That's the acronym for the Presidential Investment Infrastructure Development Fund. So monies that were taken out, Buhari has brought them back in to invest in the development of this economy. And that's one of the reasons I say he deserves a lot of credit for what is happening. Now, that's one area of funding. In 2019, he issued Executive Order number 7, I believe it is, in January of 2019. And that was the executive order setting out the terms and conditions upon which private investors could, or companies, could invest money in building Nigeria's infrastructure. So that is where the first person who took benefit of that policy was the Dangote Group. So in Lagos, where you are, you will see now that you have a better travel experience from Mile 2 right up to Urushoki. That road has been rebuilt for the first time since 1976 or so, when it was first constructed, entirely with concrete and reinforcement. Your travel time and your journey experience on that road now is a lot better. That's a product of the Infrastructure Tax Development Fund. So those people pay their taxes in advance before it is due, and then government gives them the opportunity to recoup it back. But of course, that policy requires that you cannot invest more than 50% of your tax liability for 1 year on a project. So only those who really generate large profits that turns to large taxes and the size of money required to construct a road can really participate. MTN has just signed into this. They are taking over from us the Enugu-Onitsha road to complete it. So those are projects now secured for completion because the funding is not dependent on budget. An industry, GZ Industries, who make these cans that we use for canned drinks and all of that in Agbara and Aba, have also applied to do all the industrial routes leading to their complex. We just approved that. Then some of the subsidiaries of NNPC have also invested about 600 billion in roads that connect their distribution of petrol around Niger, Mina, where we have a large storage depot, and other parts of Nigeria. So that's another source of funding. Of course, then we went to the private capital market to raise money for the Sukuk. The Sukuk is currently funding 71 roads nationwide, and those who travel a lot will see all those Sukuk signs. In Lagos, where you are, the Sukuk is funding the outer marina all the way through Amadou Bello Way, the Bar Beach, right to Eko Hotel. So even though we haven't finished that road, the experience is already better. Those are some of the kilometers that we have recorded as constructed because you are using them now.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, apart from the source of funds you have mentioned, what are the other alternative sources of funds? And also, we understand your regime is paying back to states that have constructed federal roads, perhaps more than what any other government has done since 1999. Can you shed light on that?
Okay, so let me start from the first question. The other source of funding, of course, which I did not allude to, was the budget itself. So every year, the budget size has increased from 2016 to date, and a large part of it has been devoted to infrastructure. Oftentimes, many see, oh, Ministry of Works has a large budget, but that is the ministry that enables the economy in infrastructure, just as digital communications does with rollout of fiber optic and broadband, just as aviation does with the upgrading of the airports and the runways and the safety equipment, just as transportation does with the rail and the port. These are the basic infrastructure upon which the growth of our economy will depend. Without it, we are not going to grow in the way that we expect to. So the budget is an important part of that funding source. And you know that over the last 7 years and even beyond, we have had deficit budgets, which means that we have an expansionary fiscal outlook, and we cannot just budget only what we earn. We must budget to borrow and to invest. So that's where there has been borrowing to finance most of these capital projects. Now that takes me to the other question about reform to states. Before this administration, many state governors who, under pressure from their residents and indigents, could not look away, had to intervene in federal roads. The main reason, perhaps not the only reason, was that when I looked at the budget I inherited as Minister of Works for Nigeria's roads in 2015 from the previous administration, it was 18 billion naira for the whole of Nigeria. That was not going to build any road. And that sets you a context. Then I went back for about 10 years, and I saw that it was only once during the 1999 to 2003 era or so that Nigeria spent over 100 billion up to 200 billion, 1 year on roads. All the others have been a few hundred billion. So in that period, states were getting approval to build roads. You remember the famous Western Avenue before it was finally handed over to Lagos. Our government in Lagos then used to go and put a sign there that this road belongs to the federal government. Please bear with us. Many of you will remember that. So that's the context to all of that spending by the states on behalf of the federal government. And this president came and said, okay, I will repay those debts. How was he going to repay it? We borrowed to pay back the states. And we did it across party lines. In fact, the largest payments went, I think, to Rivers, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, money spent during Amici and Akpabio's time, and I think Leo Elimoke in Cross River. But they went across board. Lagos, I think, got 40 billion at the time. So the total amount paid so far is close to 1 trillion. So when you are talking about our national debt, please factor this in. There were debts incurred before Buhari became president.
Can I have something?
No.
Hello?
No.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, how are you dealing with the issue of flood? How are you coping with the challenge posed by flood?
Because it will certainly damage some of your roads.
Well, generally across the world, bad weather is a very bad season, problematic season for those involved in the operation and management of travel logistics. Whether it's a bad storm, it can disrupt sea journeys. Trips can be canceled if a storm is bad on water. Trips can be canceled, flights can be delayed or rescheduled, where there's windstorm, snow blizzards, where there's hurricane. And so our own experience of bad weather here is largely excess rain and flood. So we are impacted. We were just planning, we were just closing our report. We have 2 seasons that we prepare for. The Ember month, which is September to December, because we know that in December there's festivity, there's a lot of travel, so we never want to be caught unprepared. So we have an Ember month plan to manage more petrol being pushed across from the ports to the cities, more goods being imported for parties, for weddings, for Christmas parties, and all of that. That's what the Ember month is around. But we now introduce a rainy season plan, which starts at the end of January, when we close our Ember month plan and submit a report, and that runs until September. So just when we're about closing the rainy season plan, these floods came in. Our controllers have been sending in reports. Last week, I indicated at a briefing after FEC that we had about 154 locations where our roads and bridges have been impacted so far. In some places, the water has not receded enough to enable us to know how bad the damage is. So it's still work in progress. We're still compiling the reports. We are also working with our colleagues in Ministry of Water Resources. We are working with our colleagues in the Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management Ministry, also with their agencies, NEMA, NIMET, and so on and so forth. But we plan to submit that report to the National Assembly when budget defense starts. And let me say this to the credit of the members of the Works and Housing Committee in the National Assembly. They've been so concerned about the impact on their constituents. My chairman in the Senate Committee, Aliero, and the chairman of the Works Committee, Honorable Bichi, and Sam Egu in the housing sector in the Senate, as well as the chairman of the House Committee, have all been concerned. So we're working together on an intergovernmental basis to prepare an assessment report and hopefully to find resources to restore the damage.
Okay, let's talk about other critical roads across the country, like the East-West Road, Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, Abuja-Kaduna-Kano Express Road, and lately, that road between Akure and Ekiti State, a lot of complaint.
Yes. So it just shows you how much work there still is to be done, in spite of the amount that has been done. No government, with all the best efforts and resources, ever finishes the work anyway. People are born every day, people graduate every day, new businesses open, new houses are built, territories expand, so the work never ends. On the East-West Road, it used to be under the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs until, I think, March or April this year. So it was never under our ministry. It was under the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs, and they have done quite some admirable work. Some parts of it have been completed, some have not been completed, some have failed because of flooding. But the president directed this year that the project should be transferred to our ministry. Now, we've spent the last few months working with the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs to do assessment. If we're taking over infrastructure, the example I use is if you're handing over an uncompleted building to me and you say it's at roof level, I must go and see where it is. So we must sign off properly. We must take over files, records, project vehicles, project sites. So all of that has been done. We have also now done a quantification of what needs to be done to complete it. And in order to shorten the narrative, let me just say to you that the East-West Road is listed now for consideration at FEC on Wednesday. So I hopefully intend to present the memorandum. Costs have changed. Some parts of the East-West roads were awarded as far back as 2006. So you are looking at roads awarded 15 years ago. So prices of materials have changed where they have not been completed. VAT rates have changed from 5% to 7%. The place where I called the eye of the storm is the LMA Junction. And that is the worst part, really, because it is the busiest part. So we have redesigned it. We have introduced expansion. We are introducing flyovers and bridges to separate trucks from motorists. So all of that will be presented to my colleagues and the president in council on Wednesday for their consideration. If they approve, then we will get to work and see how much we can do between now and the next rainy season before the end of term in order to reduce the strain and pressure on people. Akure Ado-Ekiti, let me say again that Governor Ebanji was with me last week, and I explained to him that I almost feel a sense of regret in what I decided to do, and this is what happened. We were supposed to build the road, I think, about 3 years ago. But I said, look, this road has been a single carriageway for decades. The community activity has increased. Let us dualize it. It's only about 50 kilometers.
Okay. Honorable Minister, are you there? I think we lost. What trying to establish because that road, I'm so particular about that.
We'll still come back to it. I'm sure the producer will do his best to
reconnect with him.
Because we're actually enjoying the conversation before technology.
When you are going to, if you are going to Benin or Express Road now, the Jebu aspect is almost impossible now. So, to get to Jebu, the J4, you know, it's
from Ore to Benin is good.
Ore to Benin is good. They fixed that.
Benin to Warri.
The Jebu axis now is a further route. Jebu Shagamu.
I'm particularly happy that they are trying to do something about the East-West Road. It's one of the most problematic roads in our country. And for such a very important road to have been neglected for years, it's just terrible. It makes no sense at all. Now that the president has taken a good decision to have that road, the management of that road transferred to to the Federal Ministry of Works, I think we'll see light at the end of the tunnel, and the people of the Niger Delta will be happy. We can't leave that road in that state. It's far too important to be left.
Okay, we have the minister back. Minister, before we had that hiccup, you're talking about Ado-Ekiti and Akure Road, and you're
meeting. If you can hear me, can I continue?
Yes. Yes.
So essentially, the states tried to raise money from the African Development Bank, but the African Development Bank wrote to say that they would prefer to lend to the federal government. In any event, we couldn't close the transaction because they raised a lot of issues, which we responded to also with Governor Fayemi helping at the time. But where are we? The contract has been determined. We have issued a notice of termination because we got sukuk, which the contractor could not access. So we are using new contractors, and we have also made alternative arrangements for additional funding. So in the next few weeks, hopefully, fingers crossed, we would have that under solution, and work will begin. This time we plan to use 2 contractors so that somebody can attack it from the Ekiti end and somebody will work from the Ondo end. So our team is working on that very rigorously. So I just want to appeal to commuters who use the road and the indigenes of Ekiti and Ondo to bear with us. We meant well. We wanted to give you a bigger and better road. These things take time, but we will get there.
Okay, let's talk about
No, hold on. You are talking about the J4.
Okay. Honorable Minister, we wanted to call your attention to the Jebu axis. When you are going when you are going to Benin or Express Road, the Jebu Shagamu axis is almost impassable.
Yes, that's the contract with RCC. We have heard the reports, and hopefully before Christmas and into the new year, we will provide not just remediation, but also financing. Sometimes when it seems as if we're not doing anything, it's either because the contractor has run out of funds. And let me use this opportunity again to explain this part. Contractors don't keep construction materials, and this is why infrastructure becomes so pivotal to the economy. Every time we issue a contract, we're essentially distributing money through a value chain. Contractor orders all of the materials from the aggregates to bitumen, to diesel, to lubricants, and so on and so forth to use in building the road. So, for example, I can share with you data that shows that we have used over 1 billion liters of diesel. 1 billion liters of diesel has been consumed by our ministry through our contractors. Now, this doesn't belong to contractors. These are small businesses across Nigeria supplying the diesel. So these are jobs being created for businesses. We have consumed 51 million liters of petrol. We have consumed 3 million tons of bitumen and 18 million tons of aggregates, 40 million tons of coast aggregates. And this means that if you go to quarries that were not working before this administration, they're all busy. Labor, transport, and so on and so forth. Reinforcement, 512 million tons of reinforcement. Those are businesses for steel factories, distributors, suppliers. We have used 1 million tons of cement. So this is how infrastructure generally impacts our economy. Now, for a fuller measure of what I've just said, the bitumen, 24,000 tons of bitumen in 1 year. So let's go to one report. We asked one of our biggest contractors to give us the report of the supplies he used in 2020, just one contractor in 1 year. Don't forget, I told you about 1,000 plus contracts. So this is one contractor. Maybe he has about 10, 15 contracts. In 2020, he contracted 1,421 suppliers. suppliers. He paid out 45 billion naira in this economy to those suppliers. Those are small businesses. 45. Now, what did they supply? Bitumen, laterite, sand, cement, reinforcement, and diesel. So let's take an example. That year, he procured 24,000 tons of bitumen. That is 580 truck trips. Every truck is not self-driven, there's a driver. Laterite was 50,000 truck trips. Sand was 25,200 truck trips. Cement was 3,700 truck trips. And reinforcements was 950 truck trips. Diesel, 1,200 truck trips. Of course, these are only part of what is happening. There are those who are installing signages on those highways and those who are doing lane marking. Those businesses were not there, or they were in a state of dormancy before this administration came. Each signage installation that shows you the journey time, how many hours to how many kilometers to the next state, each one employs 14 people from design to installation. And we have done thousands of them across Nigeria. Each lane marking employs hundreds of people, and we're doing lane marking. These were businesses that were really either non-existent or they were largely dormant in this economy. So this is the way to really see the report I tried to present, the human side of it, families eking a living. Now, we haven't even begun to talk of those who supply food at each construction site. Some of my interactions show that between the North and the South, as at last year, the average price of food, a meal for a worker on site, ranged between 250 to 300 naira per plate. And each of the vendors made profit of about 5,000 naira after every day, after cost. And we have not even talked about the subcontractors. So there was one subcontractor I met in Ibadan at our housing site. He had this cement mixer. That cement mixer, every day he went to site and they were using it. He got paid 20,000 naira every day. But interestingly, his wife joined him at the site in Oyo. She was cooking. So she told me she was making profit of 5,000 a day. So one family was getting 25,000 naira every day. And just multiply the possibilities across 1,600 different contract sites. And that's just works alone. When you add housing to it, it's another deal entirely. Then you add facility management. The president has signed Executive Order 11 for facility management and maintenance. So again, what is that doing? We are maintaining 28 federal secretariats. We renovated, we now have maintenance contractors, maintaining air conditioning, cooling, heating, the gardens, the lawns, the plumbing, electricals. Each facility manager is now employing at least 40 people in each federal secretariat for maintenance. Those jobs were not there before. So this is how impactful infrastructure can be. And
how are you coping with the high prices? Right now, we know a bag of cement is now 4,000 naira. A bag of cement that used to be 1,000 plus, even ordinary block. Diesel.
Good question. Good question. Our contractors have been largely reasonable. I sense that from our interactions, they have accepted, as I've suggested to them, you have to take some reduced profit expectation because the alternative also is not pleasant, which is to shut down, lay off workers. So we have that cooperation. In many instances, we are revising the costs. And as I told you about East-West Road, costs have changed. Last week, I presented 2 memos to council. There were cost changes. So we're going on a case-by-case basis. Some of those costs, I think, will moderate later, especially the cost of diesel impacted by the global energy crisis. That will probably moderate. We will see the impact on other goods maybe early into 2023 and see where we really end up.
Now let's talk about this Lagos-Ibadan Expressway again.
I beg your pardon?
Let's talk about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, probably the busiest highway in our country. People are going through extreme pain coming to Lagos. Getting out of Lagos is not that problematic. But as soon as you are approaching Lagos, people spend hours and hours in traffic. Some even wake up as early as 3:30 a.m. just so they can beat the traffic. In spite of that, they still get to work as late as 9 a.m. Can you give our people, because I know that this pain has to be endured, can you give our people a definitive time when this project will be put to bed and when this pain will end? And then where does the project itself terminate, coming into Lagos? Where does it terminate?
Is it in front of this 7-Up?
Where exactly does it terminate?
Because
Well, the origin of the project, what we call Channel 00, is just around 7-Up, around the toll gate thereabouts. The precise locations are matters of survey and mapping, but it's indicatively around there. My response is that our plan was to have ended that place before Christmas. And touch wood, I think we still can do so, subject to resources, subject to unforeseen developments, because in our business, there's so many things. You just plan for the worst and hope for the best. We've made the plans for the possible worst. We continue to hope for the best. Now, let me also explain. What we're working on is the last 6 kilometers of that side of the project, the Shagamu to Lagos side. We left it for the last because we know and we knew it was going to be the most difficult. That's the most built up area. That's the most impacted. That's where a lot of interchanges, people exiting and entering, a lot of residencies and stuff, businesses. So we felt that if we had done the path heading towards Shagamu, it might be understandable to then leave this place for the last and quickly deal with it. So I do hope that we would have resolved it before the end of the year. That's our plan, and that's what we will keep on trying to do. On the Ibadan side, we are also hoping that we will gather more pace there. At one time, the contractor was working day and night there, but we are being slowed down by the drains being constructed across the road by the Oyo State government. They are constructing a stormwater drainage, which is necessary, but their contractors seem to have stopped. So that is slowing down our work in terms of even our own construction vehicles moving construction materials also have to pass through that gridlock to deliver materials to site. So it's not easy constructing through a road that people have to use. It's just very, very challenging.
Well, let's talk about the second Niger Bridge. Is there a definitive date now when that project will be delivered?
So again, as I said, things move, things you don't see happen. So we didn't see this level of flooding. So right now we can't walk there at the project site for now until the flood recedes. Nobody can walk there. So we have lost a number of days into weeks, and the question will be when normalcy returns, can we regain it? But as of today, where we are is that the bridge as a component from Onitsha to Asaba is finished. So you can drive from the bridge end on Asaba to Onitsha and land. What remains is the approach road. Work is going on the Onitsha side from the Weri interchange to link the bridge away from the approach from the old Niger Bridge. Now we're trying to create the Asaba link, which is about a 4-kilometer road, just to link it on the Asaba side. That's where our dredger is now. We can't walk. We have to sand fill because all of that place is swamp. So we are still keeping our fingers crossed. We were hoping that it would all have been done. Nobody foresaw these floods and some of the other local issues. Compensation had to be paid. Villagers had to be appeased. A lot of consultation. All of that work is not seen, but it has to happen before you can take over a construction site. And don't forget also, I think in the months of June or July, we had to shut down power supply between Enugu, between Onitsha and Asaba. We had to move all of the transmission lines, what you call the high tension lines, across the entire project length. All of that had to be relocated. So, but people just want to see the road finished, but there's a process to it. And we have to go through this process before we can say that we have safely done a road. So we're fingers crossed, hopefully before the end of the year, if not early in the new year, but certainly that project will be completed and handed over before the end of our term.
Yeah.
Honorable Ministers.
When I visited the second Niger bridge, I saw infrastructure in place that clearly suggests that the road will be tolled. I also saw infrastructure that suggests that vehicles will be weighed before they use that road. I mean, trucks. There is a weighing facility being built.
I saw something like that
in respect of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. We have not seen evidence, despite the fact that we are approaching the end of the project, we have not seen evidence to suggest that tolling would take place. Have you decided to not put toll plazas on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway? You have been magnanimous or what?
Okay, so your question helps me demonstrate the point I was making about the difficulty of building or reconstructing a road that is in use and building a completely new virgin alignment. So what you saw on Second Niger Bridge, that's a brand new road. Nobody is using it. So we have the luxury to do and build at our own space, and if you like that word. So on Lagos-Ibadan, there are toll plazas also in the design. Okay? Yes. But what is driving us first is the complaint and the inconvenience to commuters. What they want first is the road. We must do the road first. The toll plazas will come as furniture, if you like, to the road. So it's like building a house. The first thing is you want to be sure that when there is rain, when there is sunlight, when there is heat, your house is safe and sound. All the fittings and trimmings, the furniture that comes in can come later. What you want first is shelter and protection, doors and windows, all the other fittings. So that's my analogical answer to the question.
How about the issue of dead weight sitting on roads that are not constructed to accommodate such dead weight as tankers and the rest of them, and thereby even shortening the lifespan of our roads? Is there any measure being put in place to ensure that what we continually see, especially in Lagos, whereby truckers park on our roads and ultimately do tremendous damage to those roads, do not happen to some of these new roads that this administration is delivering?
Okay, so it's a very important question you raised. It relates to axle load specification. There is an ECOWAS regulatory standard which we are signatories to. President Buhari has been helpful in ensuring compliance with by the major weight points, which is petroleum products at the depots and from the ports at our seaports. but we are having much more infractions by the petroleum tank operators. The report from NNPC is that when they load to the prescribed axle load, the trucks then go out and transship into one large truck. Now, the long-term solution, of course, is what is being done by the Ministry of Transportation, which is the rail project going into the ports. We must take off all of these containers, petrol. We must go back to the way we were before the 70s. All of these things used to be done by rail. That is one way to first enforce the, to first protect the life of the road. What we're doing is not sustainable. No nation that will want to be like move such heavy tonnage by road. So that's one. The second point is that as we go on, we now have axle way bridges. At the toll gate in Lagos, there's a way bridge there that we just refurbished. We've been talking to the stakeholders in order to enlighten them about our desire and our intention, really, not desire, intention to enforce the law. And the feedback we are getting is that they've run to some of our sister ministries, like NNPC, like Ministry of Transportation, to say, well, they will remove all their trucks from the road, they won't supply fuel. So we have to have this intergovernmental consultation, because ultimately, we don't want one policy by us to disrupt or inflict pain on the citizens. So those consultations are still going on. But there are matters of law. It's not that we are beholden to them. But when the consultations finish, the outcome I expect is that anybody who wants to transport fuel must do so according to law. You can't run a business that violates law. It's just not tenable anywhere. But we need to have those consultations so that everybody obeys the law, and we will be better for it.
Honorable Minister, we would like to know your relationship with the NNPC in terms of collaboration, in terms of road construction, related to road construction.
Okay, we have many interfaces with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, first of all. NNPC is a parastatal that they supervise. So if you look at, we just completed a retreat, and if you look at our ministerial groupings, I am in group 3. Group 3 is transport infrastructure. So that's myself, aviation, transportation, and I think who else is in that group? I think finance or so. Now, goal 4 is energy security, and we become dependent on each other for that, because they need the ports, they need the roads, they need some other facilities of infrastructure in order to be able to ensure that we get all the energy we want, whether it's liquefied LPG for our cooking, whether it's petrol, whether it's diesel, whether it's kerosene. So we have that interrelationship. But they have also participated in the tax credit scheme because they have subsidiaries that are limited companies, limited liability companies that pay tax to the federal government. And they have come to us to stay, because there were times when the whole of Niger would just be locked up. Niger State is so strategic, not only because of its size and its location, but also because it holds one of the largest, if not the largest, petroleum storage depot for the whole of Nigeria. So trucks need to be able to go in and out there. So we built this partnership, I think, last year, and they said, look, these are the major road networks where we have problems. We know you don't have money. We will use our tax credit. So we worked with them, with FIRS, who assess their tax liabilities, with the Ministry of Finance, and they said, okay, you can commit to so much. And I think it was 21 roads covering over 1,600 kilometers. So those roads are in various stages of repair. Mina, Bida, Lapai, Bida, Jeba, and so on, across the country.
Honorable Minister, before I allow you go, yes, it's less than 7 months to the end of this administration and those uncompleted projects? What will be the fate of those projects littered across the country?
Now, as I said to you, we have over 1,000+ contracts. Some of them just started. Some are nearing their end. Some are finished. So they will transit with the end of term to the next administration to own and continue. Those roads don't belong to, as I say, they don't belong to any government. They don't belong to any party. They belong to the Nigerian people. So in the way that President Buhari has said, look, as much of the roads that we inherited that have not been completed, go and finish them, I would expect that will be the disposition at the end of time. And I think that as we remain optimistic that we will retain power with Ashwaju as our president, we expect that will continue in the next administration.
I want to thank you, Honorable Minister for Works and Housing. We call him the actualizer then in Lagos State. I remember 2007 campaign.
He's still actualizing.
Yes, still at the federal level now.
Yes.
I want to thank you.
Well done, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Wow.
Thank you so much.